In episode 8, even though Sarah's mad at John B., she can't just watch him get arrested, and for whatever reason, John B. is still in the Outer Banks. Sarah knows this, and she knows that Topper is going to want to press charges, so she has to rush on over there. When she gets there, Topper is livid. He wants revenge for what happened. He didn't want to fight, John B. did, and he feels like John B. made him look like a bitch. That ain't going to happen again. He goes so far as to ask Sarah, will you be there to help me press charges against this guy? You witnessed the whole thing. You can testify against him. And Sarah, in that moment, doesn't really know what to say, so she says, all right, I'll meet you at the courthouse later. Before she does that, though, she has Key drive her over to where her dad is and ask for a favor. She asks her dad if she and her friends can borrow the family jet, fly down to South America, and get Big John back. And since Ward wants to get back in the good graces of his daughter, he says yes. This isn't the only visit that Ward had from his children that day. Earlier, he was visited by Rafe, who makes a plea for Ward to leave the island and leave him the Empire. But Ward isn't willing to leave. And when he tells Rafe that he's taken some power away from him, in fact, he had a clause put in most of the contracts that put a lot of the power in Rose's hands, Rafe snaps. Barry's speech about getting rid of Ward ends up echoing in Rafe's mind, and he pulls a gun on Ward. He's about to shoot him, but Ward knows deep down that Rafe is not going to pull the trigger. He basically calls his bluff, saying, you're not going to shoot me. I mean, I'm your dad. Deep down, you do love me. And ultimately, Ward is right. Rafe is livid at himself, but he doesn't pull the trigger. He just walks off. He can't bring himself to kill Ward, but that doesn't mean somebody else won't. He goes and talks to Barry about the situation, and Barry says, if you want me to kill your dad, you got to think long and hard about it, because once it's done, it's done. Rafe thinks he understands Barry. He's just in the moment emotional. He's also very ready for Ward Cameron to not be a thorn in his side, so he gives Barry the okay to go kill Ward. While Barry was laying out the plan to have Ward killed, John B. and JJ start laying out a plan to get to South America. They don't have passports. They don't have any money for a plane ticket. They need to find a way. But as they're discussing what a difficult situation this is going to be, they get a visit from the sheriff. He came looking for John B. because Topper is, after all, pressing charges. John B. hides out, but the sheriff puts a tracking device on the Twinkie, so they're going to know where John B. goes. Once the sheriff does leave, John B. and JJ continue to talk about how they're going to get to South America, and JJ thinks he has an idea. His dad used to work for a drug smuggler who has a plane that happened to go to South America quite a bit. So JJ and John B. go visit him. It takes a whole lot of convincing. But JJ is very persuasive. He says, look, we'll help you unload the plane. All we're asking for is a ride back. Considering the drug smuggler, Barracuda Mike, usually pays his guys $10,000 for the help, he's saving $20,000 by having the free labor, so he agrees. It's also perfect timing because he has a plane arriving that day in the Outer Banks. A couple hours later, JJ and John B. show up to help unload this thing. It's worth mentioning John B. is very hesitant about this. He doesn't want to get in any more trouble, but as JJ points out, it's the only way. Unfortunately for them, though, Barracuda Mike changes plans on them. Instead of helping unload the truck, he now wants them to deliver the drugs to a drop location. And that is way more risky and way more dangerous than what they signed up for. But once again, they don't have a lot of options here, so JJ pushes to just get the job done. As they're driving, though, they see a cop. JJ acts super suspicious, and the cop turns around and starts chasing after them. They have no choice but to ditch the vehicle in the woods and take off running. They know that this is going to come with some pretty big ramifications, but in the moment, all they're thinking about is that just cost them their trip down to South America, and they start infighting. They do so at the Twinkie, and they're unaware of the fact that the sheriff is already there because he followed the tracking device. He's there to pick up John B. He does mention how the drugs were found, and while he might be a little suspicious that they had something to do with it, for the moment, he's just focused on bringing John B. downtown. JJ vows to get John B. out of this predicament because JJ is unaware of what Sarah's already done to help out John B. The other Pogues had a pretty eventful day. Cleo and Pope continued to try to find out what was going on with these hieroglyphics, and then it dawned on them that they might have a clue in Key's phone. They go to visit her at her house, and she's in the middle of a very serious discussion with her parents. Her parents feel like Key is just driving off the rails, and they want to get her back on track, which means they want to send her to a wellness retreat. But really what it is it's a camp for troubled youth. Kiara is completely against this and uses any excuse to get out of this conversation, which pisses her parents off even more. But Pope's suspicion is correct. Kiara had that picture of the painting from Singh's house in her phone. And after looking at the painting in Singh's house and looking at the hieroglyphics, they confirm that it is one and the same language, a language that's never been deciphered before. This language is the key to finding El Dorado, but it also could be the key to getting Big John back. They know that they have to get this information to John B. right away. They're unaware that he's in prison, so they rush off. Key's dad really wants to stop her, but ultimately he lets her go. When Key, Pope, and Cleo get to John B.'s house, they find JJ, but they don't find John B. They're filled in that he was arrested. And at the courthouse, Sarah shows up to, quote, testify against him, but in reality, she pulls Topper aside and explains what's going on with John B.'s dad. She knows that that's not an excuse for what John B. did, but what she asks of Topper is that he press charges the next day, because she tells Topper he's leaving for South America tomorrow, which means he'll never be back. Topper is very reluctant to do this, but he has a thing for Sarah, so he reluctantly agrees. He does so with the promise from Sarah that she won't go with John B. and that she'll hang out with him later that night. When later that night comes, Sarah is sending Topper straight to voicemail, and it's driving him nuts. He's hanging out at the marina, he runs into Rafe, and Rafe tells him, dude, my sister's playing you. You're too dumb to see it. She's probably with John B. right now. And Rafe is right. Sarah waited outside of the courthouse to see John B. She knows that John B's still mad at her, but she says, well, guess what? I'm the one that got you out of this, and I'm the one that can get you to South America. So you might want to follow me back to the chateau. And that's where they meet up with the rest of the Pogues. She tells them about her grand plan, that they're going to use Ward Cameron's private jet the next day to fly down to South America. That's when Cleo, Pope, and Key fill them in on the fact that they now have the translation of the stone. This is a huge win for the Pogues, and they celebrate that night with plans on leaving in the morning. Before they do that, there's some apologies that need to take place. John B. and Sarah make up. That didn't take long. They start hooking up. And in the other room, JJ finally apologizes to Key for stealing her dad's money clip. But nobody's aware of the fact that outside, Topper showed up. What Rafe was saying, it just ate at him for a little bit, so he needed to see for himself. And when he looks in, he sees Sarah hooking up with John B., and it just infuriates him. So he looks around and sees a gas can, grabs it, pours gas all over the place, and lights the chateau on fire. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.